Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Bradbury Group, New Zealand's best weekly political argument, hosted by the militant, Marxist, anti-Santa, Martyn Bradbury. The Bradbury Group is streamed live on Rover, Sky TV, YouTube and Facebook. Proudly sponsored by Aotearoa, journalism you can trust. Let the arguments begin.
Kia ora Aotearoa, the true demarcation of power in a late-stage capitalism, liberal, progressive democracy is the 1% richest plus their 9% enablers versus the 90% rest of us. Welcome to the Bradbury Group, New Zealand's best weekly political argument. I'm your host, the editor of the daily blog, Martyn Bradbury. Bomber to my comrades, Mr. Bradbury if you're nasty. My pronouns are us and we. Coming up on this evening's show, the political panel all-stars tonight are Māori Party President John Tamihere, NZME Head of Business Fran O'Sullivan, and New Zealand Herald columnist Simon Wilson. Tonight's one-on-one and 10 is leader of the Labour Party Chris Hipkins. Shout out to Kiwi Skirt and Chewy from BHN moderating tonight's YouTube page. Good evening to all the Bradbury Easters online watching right now. Your comments will appear on screen as we go. Shout out to our Wātea, Facebook, Rover, Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Sky TV whānau. And our Twitter panel this evening is Tim Selwyn. He'll be tweeting live online at Twitter, hashtag the Bradbury Group. Before all that, however, is this week's War on News. Brothers and sisters, last week, the Associate Agriculture Minister, ACT MP, former President of Federated Farmers and student voted most likely to be mistaken for Boss Hog, Andrew Hoggard, revealed that he'd only consulted with the pork industry about giving pig farmers a 10-year loophole before they have to do anything about sow crates. Let's be 100% honest about why we all love this story so much. One, his name is Hoggard. Two, it's another venal example of how crony capitalism seeps into everything this government touches. And three, he kind of looks like a pig. Now, I know what you'll be saying. Bomber, you're pretty fat, sure, but I look like a bear. He looks like an actual hog. It would be like me being the Associate Minister of Bears, allowing all bears tax-free capital gains and the right to maul any shop owner they like. And the only people I talked about this legislation with was the Council of Bears and Goldilocks. Let me double down. That little piggy went to market. That little piggy burnt Rome. That little piggy sold sad ham. That little piggy exported none. And that little piggy went act all the way home. Talking of swine, news this week that global ratings agency S&P Global's latest report on the ever-changing policies on water reform said the latest water service models, known as local water done well, would not alleviate the agency's negative outlook bias on some local governments. S&P said the reforms promised flexibility, but also created uncertainty compared with the Three Waters proposal offered by the former Labour government. Labour embarked upon Three Waters to lower the rates costs they knew were coming for our desperately underfunded water infrastructure, alongside answering the legal requirements to recognise Māori interests in water. Dark ag money funneled through right-wing AstroTurf influencers convinced Kiwis this was an existential race war and that Tamihere was stealing the water. So Three Waters got scrapped, National's piss-poor version adopted, and now you're gonna pay more in rates for water. Laugh it up, rednecks. Laugh it up. And finally, in this week's War on News, Bloomberg is a global financial data software and media company that provides real-time market data, news and analytics. They are hardly card-carrying members of the Communist Party. Today, they reported that the biggest Arctic carbon sink is increasingly unstable. There are 1.4 trillion tonnes of carbon locked into permafrost, but with the rapid melting of the Arctic, that carbon is now dramatically escalating. And the warmer it gets, the more will be released in giant methane burps that will dramatically push temperatures beyond civilization's capacity to adapt to. Turns out, taking your own bags to the supermarket isn't really going to solve climate change after all. Brothers and sisters, we're all going to die on a burning planet thanks to the lies of the petro-industrial complex and their polluter mates. To quote the great warrior poet oracle Mike Hosking, Happy days. The political panel The political panel all-stars up shortly, Whānau, but first this week's one-on-one in 10 with leader of the Labour Party, Chris Hipkins. Kia ora, comrade. Welcome to the show and thank you for being available to the Fourth Estate. Your democracy is grateful.
Kia ora, Brett Combat Bomber. Great to talk to you as always.
Chippy, let's get into it. The property speculators are screaming. The real estate pimps are crying. David Seymour fears a socialist takeover of all assets. Winston is grumpy. And Chris Luxon managed to shoot himself in both feet while justifying why he should get $600,000 tax-free from flipping houses. If you want to know why you should be for Labour's targeted capital gains, look at who's screaming against it. Why shouldn't we give everyone 3 free GP visits annually with more money into public health for a tax that 9 out of 10 Kiwis won't be expected to pay?
Absolutely. Very, very fair question. That is the thing that, the National Party are desperately trying to peddle out there at the moment. So much so that they've actually edited video footage of me to suggest that I was saying things that I didn't say, because they've given up trying to actually mount a principled argument against it because they can't. 3 free doctor's visits will help to keep people healthy.
Right.
They'll be available to everybody. It will be good for our health system, good for our wider health and well-being. And we can pay for that through a targeted, simple capital gains tax on people who are buying and selling rental properties or commercial properties. And it will mean that we're encouraging investment in productive industries that might create jobs and actually help to create opportunities for New Zealanders.
Sure. Comrades on the left have been critical and they have claimed this doesn't go far enough. But your job as Labour is to pull voters away from National, not cannibalise Green vote. That middle voter wants stability and some promise of a reduction in cost of living. And this targeted capital gains tax, alongside your future fund, appeals to that middle voter. That's why the attack against it is so hysterical. The right know this policy is a real raid on their 2023 votes. What other policy areas are you considering?
Well, we're focused on how we can grow an economy, a New Zealand economy, that actually works for all New Zealanders, rather than one that sees the benefits of economic growth captured by a small minority. So we're talking about a future that's made in New Zealand, by New Zealand, for New Zealanders, not a future in which we sell off what little we have left to rich foreign investors who then take the profits, the innovation, the ideas offshore to benefit some other country. We want to see New Zealand investing in and backing New Zealanders, which is why we have the Future Fund. It's why we're focused on how we can move investment in New Zealand away from the speculative housing market towards productive businesses that create jobs and opportunities for New Zealanders.
We just celebrated Labour Day and the 40-hour working week. What is the point of an egalitarian country if the government of the day has no interest in pursuing policy that helps build that egalitarianism?
It's absolutely right that we celebrate Labour Day, and it's absolutely right that we continue to look at how we can make sure that all New Zealanders get to have a bit of work-life balance. For a lot of New Zealanders, they're working harder and harder. They're working some of the longest hours in the OECD, and yet we're earning some of the lowest incomes.
Yeah.
Things have to change. There's a reason why 200 Kiwis a day are giving up and leaving the country. It's because they're not getting the kind of opportunities here that they deserve.
Talking of egalitarianism, there are not that many silver bullets when it comes to society's challenges, but sweet Jesus, public education is one of them. This insane situation at Kelston Boys High, where a hostile takeover by a third-party charter school operator has shocked many Kiwis who had no idea that David Seymour's legislation allowed for this. On top of everything else now, do parents at state schools need to fear a hostile charter school takeover?
Well, this highlights the absolute absurdity of the charter school model, where you can have a hostile takeover of schools. You've got a government that sees schools as simply business units to be acquired or merged or disposed of, forgetting about the kids, the teachers, the parents. What's happening at Kelston Boys is utterly utterly unacceptable. The idea that you could have a school being under siege from a group who have no connection, no real connection with the
Right?
school, I think is just something that the government really need to front up and explain, and they need to put a stop to it.
The Bradbury Group has received today a copy of the application to take over Kelston Boys High, and they redacted parts of it poorly, and if you copy and paste the redacted parts, it allows you to see that part of their application is claiming Kelston Boys High is a violent school. It exposes names of police officers, specific incidents, and details of police operations that appear to have been included without formal approval. The text describes police setting up checkpoints outside the school, escorting students at Polyfest, and bringing a paddy wagon to control post-game violence. How can accusations like that be made without context to justify taking over a public school without the community responding?
I think the fact that this charter school application is being considered by the government, despite the school being firmly opposed to it, despite the parent community being firmly opposed to it, despite real questions about the suitability of the people who are trying to to take over Kelston Boys and make it into a charter school,
Right.
shows that the charter school model is just totally fundamentally flawed. Labor will repeal the charter school model, will deal with any schools that have been established in the meantime on a case-by-case basis. But this government needs to put a stop to this madness.
When the charter school legislation passed, David Seymour was asked on Q&A how many New Zealand schools did he intend to make charter schools. He said in England it was 80% and he wanted a similar level here. If Kelston Boys is taken over, it's just the beginning of a full frontal assault on public education, isn't it?
This government doesn't believe in public education. David Seymour certainly doesn't believe in public education. There's a real risk here that they haven't thought through the consequences of what they're doing. Kelston Boys, for example, has a school enrolment zone. For some kids, it is their only option.
Right.
So if it effectively is privatised as a charter school, what's going to happen to those kids who don't want to go to a privatised charter school? They have no other choice.
The other issue we are discussing tonight is the current state of relationship between Māori and the government. This government argues it is not anti-treaty or anti-Māori, yet almost weekly there is a new attack on Māori and the treaty. Does this government just get too much political capital using Māori aspiration as a political punching bag? What would Labour do differently with that relationship?
This has been such an ugly government when it comes to the relationship between Māori and non-Māori in New Zealand. We've seen the National Party play the race card in opposition before, but it's the first time, probably since Muldoon, that they have tried to do it in government, and it's ugly and it's not going to be good for New Zealand's future. People like Jim Bolger, Christopher Finlayson, Hekia Parata, National Party luminaries who worked really hard to improve the relationship between national governments and Māori would be so ashamed of what this National Party are doing at the moment.
Yeah. Finally, Chippy, our suicide rates came out last week and they are still so staggeringly high. It's harder and harder to gain access to mental health services. Oranga Tamariki released a report showing that 500 kids in care were abused, and tomorrow we're expecting unemployment numbers to go up. Many Kiwis are looking to the political opposition for big solutions. What would a Labour-led government mean for those wanting better?
We've got to focus in areas like mental health. We've got to focus on some of the root causes of mental health problems. We have huge economic disparities in New Zealand that put people under huge pressure. That is a cause of mental health distress for a lot of people. There are real issues of marginalisation within our communities that we've got to tackle, issues around homelessness that we've got to tackle, issues around drug and alcohol abuse that we've got to tackle. Methamphetamine use under this government has gone through the roof. And so for all their tough on crime rhetoric, the gangs have never made more money out of selling drugs than they are at the moment. So we've got to really tackle those issues if we want to turn this around.
Thank you, comrade. We'll talk to you again soon. Have a great time.
Good as gold. Good to talk to you, Bomber.
Cheers, Chippy. Okay, now to our political panel all-stars. Our first panellist is the only reason you would buy a subscription to the New Zealand Herald. He's a cross between House of Hufflepuff and Obi-Wan Kenobi. He actually is. He actually is. Militant cyclist and Auckland visionary New Zealand Herald columnist, Simon Wilson. Kia ora, comrade. Welcome to the show.
Kia ora.
One word to describe the week, please, sir.
Derangement. And now I say this word because I've been reading Ian McEwan's new novel, which is set in the early 22nd century. It's called What We Can Know, and it looks back over the 100 years between when it's set and now.
Yes.
And it posits that we are now living in a time that comes to be called the derangement.
Right.
The derangement being,
Yep.
we know what's going on. We know the climate is burning up the planet.
Yep.
We know that economically the country, the world is not at all able to cope with this, that the people who do have the authority and the power are turning their backs, that general populations are going along with it, not doing what we should be doing, even though we know. And McEwan's suggestion is that this is a period of history which comes to be called the derangement, where we
charming,
just
charming.
it is.
It feels like a social bubonic plague about to hit us.
And can I
Lovely.
go on to one more?
Yes.
He posits that in 2042, the Russians launch an enormous hydrogen bomb at America. It falls into the Atlantic Ocean. It's not clear whether it was meant to or not. Creates a massive tidal wave that creates the inundation, which devastates the populations of the Atlantic on both sides.
Oh, lovely,
Everyone living
lovely.
coastally.
Charming,
Cities
charming,
are gone.
charming.
Britain gets turned into an archipelago of islands, etc. It's terribly frightening, but also it's a human story of, hope.
Thank you for your horrid human story of hope there, Simon.
But
If
we
you're
need to
still
wise
with
up.
us and you haven't
That
hurt
arrangement.
yourself yet. Simon Wilson, ladies and gentlemen. Our next panellist is the doyen of the political right, and alongside Simon Wilson is the only other reason you would buy a New Zealand Herald subscription. NZME Head of Business, the unstoppable force of nature that is Fran O'Sullivan. Kia ora, comrade. Thank you for
Kia ora.
joining us. One word to describe the week, please, ma'am.
Anarchy.
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 Any reason why?
Well, look what's happening with the Maori party self-destructing, and as an anarchist myself, an anarcho-capitalist version of many years standing,
Yes.
I'm delighted. I'm delighted to see what's happening with Kelston as well, because this is going to blow up magnificently in everyone's face. If there are issues with the school, they will have to get sorted out. And, really the charter schools brigade needs to get back into its lane. There's a good case for charter schools, but I would prefer that they're actually new. They served a purpose, that they're not trying to take over an existing place.
Yeah, or the school wants it. The
obviously-
school wants it,
and
right?
the school wants it.
Yeah.
And the other marvellous thing is watching what's happening with Te Pāti Māori.
Again, you want to bring that up again?
Again, as a member of the white feeding
Sure.
frenzy.
Yes, the white feeding frenzy.
I'm loving it.
You're loving it. And last but certainly not least, he's a lover and a fighter. But mostly a fighter. Former Talkback host, former Labour Party minister, hero who sued Mike Hosking for defamation. Ladies and gentlemen, the Māori Party president, John Tamihere. Kia ora, comrade. Welcome to the show. One word to describe the week, please, sir.
Madness, and I've just applied that to the previous speaker just before me. But putting that to one
Surprise.
side, madness comes in many forms, and the problem that Te Pāti Māori has is that we're on the rage everywhere. We just knocked off the Labour Party that brought all the resources it could in winning Tamaki Makaurau. Our capacity, our systems and infrastructure are beyond repute. Then all of a sudden, we get back-ended by two people that want to play out in Madam's media rather than on the marae. And so when people vent in the Pākehā media, and as I said, the white feeding frenzy will occur. And you've just heard that in the previous speaker's views. And she loves anarchy so long as it's at the expense of Māori people.
So
Oh,
long
and
as
poor
it's happening
people,
in
and
your
poor
party.
people, and poor people, not just Māori people.
Hold on, hang on a minute. You had your say. I'm just finishing my say. See, here's the thing. When people like her don't like what I say, they always try and censor me. always try and suppress, oppress, and they
You're
call it anarchy.
unsuppressible.
For goodness sake.
Brothers,
Anyway, we're really hitting, well, at the end of the day, there will be a decisive result
Yes.
within the next wee while. And when we come into 2026, we'll be fighting to destroy the worst regime on any rhythmic sense of numbers, whether it's unemployment, whether it's spending more money, borrowing more money than Ardern did, and she had a pandemic, whether it's blowing the economy, the highest unemployment rates, the highest exodus rates. This is what we should be concentrating on, not on egos and not on feeding frenzies. Full stop. I'm sorry, Bomber, I've got to exit because I'm off to another meeting very shortly.
All right.
Pending.
Okay, so well, before you go, can we just get a clear idea of what's happening inside Te Pāti Māori? Because your incredible post yesterday, for the first time, revealed that what's really been going on in all of this is that you've had two MPs who have actually been attempting to overthrow the leadership. And now that we understand that, it explains why Uru had a go at you. It explains why Delk went into that sectarian rhetoric, and it sort of explains the overspending. Now that we know that it actually was an attempt on the leadership, does that change people's view? I mean, it's no longer an attack about the Māori Party's tikanga. This was an attempt to take over the leadership.
Look, there's what you try and do in all political parties is when you have major issues inside the party, you try for the benefit of those that are members of the party, those that support the party and vote for the party, you try and ensure that there's a veneer of unity, koteitanga and all that.
Yep.
Become very exhausting with these two. The problem you have is that people that are indisciplined in regard to teamwork and believing that they're above the party and above the movement, they always consider that they can run their own fiefdom.
Yes.
Without caucus structure, without caucus rules, without caucus discipline. And Mr. Ferris is a prime example of that.
Yeah.
But so are the Kapakini. So anyway, it's come to a position where we can't go into 2026.
Yes.
Unless we are unified and of one mind and
exactly.
one voice.
Exactly.
That will occur. That will occur, and I can assure you, we'll be a force to be reckoned with.
Simon Wilson wants to ask you a quick question. Go on. Yeah, Simon. Go
JT, Simon here. You used the phrase veneer of unity, which I think probably most people in politics would say is critical to have the sense, to give the population, the voters, the sense that your party is unified. Yeah. It is true that Mr. Ferris, Takata Ferris and the Kapakingis have complained about things, but I would have thought the person who had, or the people who had put the real disunity into the public and horrified everybody were yourself and Rawiri Waititi.
Yeah, but you'd say that, wouldn't you, Simon?
Well,
you're like your mate over there from the Herald. No, but you're like your mate from the
I got to say, it's not often that people say Fran and I think the same. So.
No. You're right for the same You're right for the same rags.
Well, instead of it being our fault, my question: if you could back up a bit, would you do it differently if you could back up a bit?
No, your question. Can I answer your question? So your question is that it's my fault and Rawiri's fault that somebody, instead of going onto the marae, instead of using our constitution, instead of using our tikanga, went to people like you and Fran. Now, that's not how we can play out. We were deeply constrained in coming public until the last 48 hours.
Yeah.
48 hours. That's when we've gone public, not in the last 12 weeks. So get your facts straight.
Well,
Thank you very much.
Fran, you've got a question? You've got a question? Quickly before John moves on.
Look, seriously, JT, I mean, put aside all the biffo at the beginning, like my biffo. Can you just give us an indication of what you expect when you sit down with the iwi Chairs Forum? And is there a pathway to resolving this that keeps the party together or in Parliament, or do you see it fragmenting?
Look, at no time will we be in jeopardy in 4 of the seats.
Mm-hmm.
What Kapakini and Mr. Ferris have done have blunted massive momentum that we'd built, no doubt about that. And so in real politics, there's no way that Māori Waititi, that Devi Ngarewa Paka, that Hana Maipi Clark, and that Ordini Kaipara will be defeated in 2026. On the basis of that fulcrum, I can guarantee you, when we look to possibly go to new candidates or otherwise, we'll do very well off that very solid base.
Are we hearing it from you first? Ordini Kaipara is back in your team?
Well, you don't talk to her. Don't talk to me. Anyway,
Thank you, John. Thank you, John.
Nice talking to you.
We will get you on the show again shortly. Thank you, comrade. Okay, folks, the show tonight, Issue 1, Labour's targeted capital gains tax versus the economy. Issue 2, the Kelston Boys High School hostile charter school takeover. Is it coming to a school near you? And Issue 3, the relationship between Māori and the government. Plus, we'll have a final word at the end of the show where each panellist gets to go to the mountaintop to see who breaches broadcasting standards this week. All our money is on John. Come on, it'll be John. Comrades, let's get into tonight's show with Issue 1 and the response to Labour finally releasing policy has excited the many and enraged the few. Fran, the family home isn't included, farms aren't included, KiwiSaver and shares aren't included, business and personal items aren't included, and inheritances aren't included. 9 out of 10 Kiwis won't be impacted by this, and in return, I get to go see the doctor. What's not to love?
I think it's a cop-out. I mean, I actually support a full-blown capital gains tax regime, which is comprehensive. So there you go. And I have advocated for one for at least 15 years.
Yep.
And, But, I think it, like the Bright Line test is a good thing. Basically, that is sort of really what it is.
Yep.
But I think it's something which had been spread at not 28%, but the lesser amount, the 15%,
Yep.
but across major asset classes, would have been a good thing.
Right.
So why should the farms get off? I mean, I find it weird that commercial buildings get whacked because sometimes when people are selling those, it's really to invest in a bigger one for their firm. Yeah.
Right. Follow-up question. You are one of New Zealand's best business journalists and commentators. Your experience matters. 60% of retailers aren't intending to take extra staff over Christmas, and the unemployment rate is expected to go up tomorrow. What are you seeing in the economy right now from the front lines? What are your concerns?
Well, I think you really have hit the nail on the head with that one. I mean, unemployment will rise.
Yep.
There's a lot of insolvencies still coming through.
Right.
But also people need confidence to spend. And when you've been hammered, people talk a hell of a lot about the cost of living, but you do need money in your pocket. You do need to have a sense of confidence to get out and buy things in retail shops. And that's not been happening. Plus, a lot of companies are retiring debt. They're, trying to get through a lengthy period, which the recession has gone on longer. Yep. So I do think it will turn, but when, I don't know. But, there are things which are happening if you take the long view. Which are positive, but in the short term, it makes for a headache for the government. And actually, if the Labour and its fellow travellers get in, it will also be a problem for them.
Simon, Chippy's criticism of Luxon flipping property $600,000 tax-free was a very popular comeback to National Party criticism of the policy. Is the tide turning politically on speculators?
It's very hard to know the answer to that because the people who shout the loudest about speculators, and I'm one of them, are people for whom the tide turned. Personally,
right.
So I think that's a tricky thing to say. You going to ask the follow-up, or am I going to
Follow-up
keep
question.
going? Yes?
Follow-up
Okay.
question. The Socialist New York mayoral candidate Soren Mandani is widely expected to win due to his cost of living policies like rent freezes, government-backed supermarkets, free childcare and free public transport. By promising 3 free doctor visits each year, have Labour finally woken up to the need to make voters' lives materially better rather than grand plans that go nowhere?
I'm astonished. Bomber, have you been sitting on my shoulder watching me write today?
You know I have.
I have filed a column for
Yes.
the Herald tomorrow
Yes.
about Mamdani and what
Yes.
he means and what that means for Chippy and
Yep.
and Labour and the Greens and Chloe Swarbrick here. So there's a long answer. It's going to be in the paper tomorrow.
Oh, come on!
But the shorter answer is, I am impressed with capital gains tax policy. Like Fran, I would love it to be comprehensive
Yep.
and wide-ranging. In fact, I think it should be a wealth tax.
Yep.
But I am impressed with Labour's ability to find something that could actually be something that gets them
Because
elected.
everyone else has failed. Cunliffe,
That's right,
Jacinda, they've all
absolutely.
failed this capital gains
Gets
thing.
them elected because you need to get elected with your policies. And
Yep.
that's the big debate on the left. Are we going to... I think of it in terms of poke the beast or not. If you have policies that poke the beast jumps up and eats you.
Yeah.
That happened to a degree with in the last election.
Totally.
With a $10 million being spent on National to
Yep.
get Labour out. Those sorts of things. There are all sorts of beasts that the left has to counter in political terms. You don't want to do that, but at the same time you want policies that will work. So you have to see this capital gains tax as a step one, but a step one that could be palatable, and in that it makes a lot of sense. And if you go back to the
Yep.
Zamdani thing, Zamdani has an extraordinary ability that, although everybody has thrown identity politics at him
Yes.
because he is a Muslim
Yep.
and all
Pro-Palestine,
the rest, and pro-Palestine, in New York,
Yes.
heavily pro-Israel
But he's
city.
understood the cost of living matters, right?
What's important to him is he has said, I will bring down the cost of living. And
Yeah.
these are practical measures with which we're going to do it.
Yeah,
And it
yeah.
is astonishing that he's gone there. And that's the big lesson for the left in New Zealand. Cost of living is what matters to most New Zealanders. So what are your cost of living policies?
Overwhelmingly.
Wrap the rest around it.
Fran, is this smart politics from Labour? If they came out with a wealth tax, all they would have done is cannibalise Green Party vote. That doesn't get them closer to 51%. It just cuts down the pie. By making this appeal and directly going for those voters who voted for them in 2020 but voted for National in 2023, that is a big chunk of the block. Is it smart politics?
Oh, I think it's cowardice, actually, as I was saying. Get out there and sell it properly.
I love
This
the way
is
the
toe
right
in the
wants the
water.
left
Toe
to
in the
become
water.
unelectable. Yeah.
Well, no, I don't think so. And I think
But that's what it is.
if you look at some of the commentary from business,
Yep.
there are a lot of people in business who actually support a capital gains
Sure,
tax.
sure.
They pay it in every goddamn country in the world, apart from about 5 or 6.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
and meantime we
There's
have
a maturity now in New Zealand to agree
and
with it.
Yes, I do, and I think it's been there for some time, and
Yes.
I think it's a great shame that Labour bottled it after the Cullen report. I
Yep.
think the Cullen report had some things that could
Yes.
have, but they were in government and they could have done something with it.
Quick round to both of you.
Sometimes you do it when you're in government.
When
you
you're
say,
in government,
"Damn it."
quick round,
if you're
quick
trying
round,
to get into
quick round.
government, it's a different matter.
Quick round to both of you.
was
Key
in
left
government.
New Zealand with 60 billion in debt. Labour borrowed 80 billion. Most of that was for COVID. And National are projected to borrow 120 billion. So why does the left get attacked as crazy borrowers? Simon. Why do we get the shit, but Key left 60 billion and these buggers are going to do 120 billion? They didn't have it. They didn't have a COVID to pay for.
Because the rhetoric of New Zealand politics is, on the one side, on the right, you have people who are against debt
Yes.
and for personal responsibility and for lower taxes.
But they
and
don't do it.
None of the facts will support that argument, but that's what the argument is. And it's very, very sticky.
Fran, why do we always get nailed as, we're terrible economic managers? That's a lot of debt. We didn't do that.
It is a lot of debt, and I'm looking forward to someone sorting it out one day. But just to get back to what we were talking about before on tax. I would like to see challenged Barbara Edmonds putting on her tax lawyer hat,
Yes.
and not somebody who's been pulled every which way by a bunch of people in the party, to actually come up with something which was credible and take that to the election. In her bones, she would not be somebody who'd be taking off itty-bitsy taxes here to pay for visits over there. I mean, that's a ridiculous argument.
Not if I'm getting 3 doctor's visits a
Oh,
year.
but
It's not a
that's
ridiculous
bullshit.
argument.
It's not, for God's
Very
sake.
good politics.
That's the
all
difference between me
part of
going to a
the-
doctor or not.
No, it's not.
It is.
That's rubbish. That's
quick-
rubbish.
quick round.
That's rubbish.
It's rubbish. It might be rubbish if you're looking at it purely economically, but politically, it's brilliant.
Crap.
It's
Quick
a
round,
very
quick round.
They want to get elected. They don't want to please the purists on the right, Fran.
Nothing to do
Unemployment,
with
a quick
purists
round
on
to
the
both
right.
of you. A quick round to both of you. Unemployment stats are due tomorrow. It's currently 5.2%. What are your predictions? Simon.
I don't know.
It's out tomorrow.
It's going to go up a little bit higher. I don't think it's going to go up enormously. So just another couple of points, perhaps.
Is it going to be the underemployment that really sticks out?
Look, if
Because
you
a
look,
lot of people out there
Yeah.
don't have the extra work, right?
yeah, that's true. But if you look at unemployment numbers, it has been higher in the past.
Yep,
And
yep,
you know,
it has.
you go back to that early 1990s after Richardson and co came in. It's a bit like now when younger people coming out of education wouldn't actually necessarily go to university because they couldn't see a job at the other end of it. But nowadays people just get on a plane and go to Australia or somewhere else.
And that's the reason the unemployment's lower, isn't it?
Exactly,
Right?
because they're actually doing something quite rational. They're not sitting around bitching, sitting on the couch, eating fridges. Look, I've got experience, where bunches of young men come round and they eat your fridge and they're about 16 or 17 and you think, for God's sake, just get a job and get out there,
But they are doing something irrational, that's true.
It is,
Yes.
it is.
And that's
So
a worry,
they're-
isn't it?
Well, it is a worry in many respects, but, hopefully some will come back. But in terms of looking after themselves, backing themselves and actually taking a very big step, I applaud that. Rather than sitting here on the dole, getting depressed,
Comrades, we need to move on to issue 2 tonight, and that is the Kelston Boys High hostile charter school takeover by a third-party group who don't have the school or community backing. Simon, this third party is called the Bangers Education and Wellbeing Trust. Firstly, the name is terrible. It sounds like a provincial swingers club. Secondly, this is what David Seymour promised in his legislation, yet many Kiwis thought schools and communities had to want charter schools rather than having them forced upon them by outside third parties. Is this a political time bomb for the government?
It is, and Fran touched on it before, and I think she was right. There is an underlying issue here, and that is that there are many schools in New Zealand, and particularly in what used to be called the low decile schools,
Yep.
which are underperforming academically, but also have a culture in the school where there may be too much violence, and we've heard about that explicitly in relation to Wesley recently. And that's a long-standing issue that finally is being addressed. It's incredible. It's been decades where everybody involved has known about that, taking decades. The question of how you resolve the education challenges for the poorer people, and particularly boys among us, is the central issue. And unfortunately in New Zealand, particularly in Auckland, education debates get completely skewed towards middle-class parents going, will my precious darlings be able to get ahead as much as they should? They will. Their precious darlings in middle-class schools will do fine.
Yeah.
But they're not the people who are at risk. And we also get into the stupid argument of, is King's College better than Auckland Grammar?
Yeah.
It's the most pointless debate in the world.
Follow-up question.
But we should be saying, what are the resources, what are the talents, what are the skills? And one of the obvious things to me is that I mentioned Auckland Grammar before and the private schools. Rather than those schools offering scholarships to take the talent out of South Auckland, they could be funded to go into South Auckland and to help because they have the teachers who have the skills to do it.
Follow-up question. New curriculum targets set by Minister Erica Stanford are many times more than the current education targets. Will third parties use schools failing these new targets as justification to move on them with more hostile takeovers, or am I being too cynical?
You might be, because it's an enormous undertaking to take over a school and run it and think you're going to be successful doing it. So there's a level of delusion that must be involved with the people who are trying to do this at Kelston Boys. Must have it in their heads that they are the superheroes who are going to save the world. It's not like that. But if they do get a toehold there, will others look at it and go, gosh, we could do that too. We could be heroes as well in that appalling way.
Follow up, Fran, we had New Zealand education academic Professor Welby Ings on the show last week, and he argued that New Zealand actually has a lot to be proud of with our public education system. We score above the OECD average in reading, science and maths. New Zealand is 4th highest in the OECD for proportion of adults with tertiary degrees. In the OECD, we're 10th in reading and 11th in science. While it is true post-COVID that we have had issues with math, we have. Overall, our public education system is very good. Why are we allowing private operators to move in, deunionise teachers for private profit?
Well, that's a very good question, and I'm not sure I've got the answer for that. Look, in some cases, it may be a justified thing to do, but whether it should be done in a hostile manner, and I don't think that's particularly wise. The case would need to be made properly, not kind of a, like in a business sense. It would need to be made. It would need to be, meetings, persuasion, that type of thing, laying it out and building a, sort of a atmosphere where people did sign up to it if they thought that was the best thing. Who knows? In some cases, it may be the best thing to move to a different system.
Sure. But that's got to be proven, right? And you've got to have the community alongside with you.
Yes, but in some respects, I do. My expectation had been charter schools would be new, totally new.
That was that's what I thought.
And then people might decide to migrate to that.
Yeah.
Except that if the deeper plan, the Seymour plan, is for
takeover
the education system to convert over time to charter schools at a point at which it can't just be new, it's got to be.
Look, Mr Seymour won't be in power by the time that actually happens.
I love an optimist.
Fran, is National once again covering for ACT Party social policy fantasies? Because it doesn't. There are only 15 charter schools in New Zealand, right? The vast majority are public schools. Launching hostile takeovers won't just create local backlash, but every parent with a kid at a state school will fear this. Has the government started a fight that in election year that they really don't want to be having?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of hard to know where National really sits on this because, you can see a certain amount of staking out for ACT Party and ACT votes.
Right.
But I would have thought, just in the last week or two, Jim Bolger's death, those sorts of things
would remind National about where they were from.
And just listening actually to what the Prime Minister said at the funeral, I would have thought a little bit of, really thinking that through a bit more. It's, there's quite a lot in the National Party longer term that doesn't want to necessarily, from their brand's perspective, get, destroyed.
Right. Quick round to both of you. Will Erica Stanford agree to Bangor's education and well-being just taking over Kelston Boys High? She's the one legislatively who makes the decision. Will she do it?
I was just about to say no, I can't see it because what's in it for her. But actually, is she going to care about what happens at Kelston Boys High? I'm not sure.
I think
she might just leave it to Seymour.
Will she really do this?
She's had a bit of a scrappy relationship with Seymour from time to time. When she has put her foot down, where does she sit longer term? Does she sit longer term in wanting to support ACT or with an election pending and somebody who, is to come, maybe a deputy PM, something like that? Does she want to actually start to hug the National brand again? I think if she's got any long-term sense, she'll do the latter.
Comrades, we need to move on to issue 3 tonight, and that is the relationship between Māori and government. Fran, the Marine and Coastal Area legislation has been described by former National Party Cabinet Minister and Attorney General Chris Finlayson as, and I quote, extremely harmful to race relations, and he's argued these amendments do not restore the original intention of Parliament, rather they undermine it. Is this government getting lost in culture war fights with Māori?
I don't think it's a culture war. I think when you boil it down, it comes down to property rights and a range of other things. And some of the rhetoric around that has been no one owns the water, for instance, and there are other, I think the term being used is interests, interests
Yes.
by other actors in the economy. Look, it's really complex and it's a strange way it's been approached. I mean, Chris Finlayson, he obviously has his previous role as a cabinet minister. He's also somebody who acts in this area legally or has since leaving politics. I'm not suggesting in any respect a bias on his behalf at all, but I think it is more complex, and I think there needs to be a few more educated voices in the sense of educated and understanding the legal ramifications. It's not something which you'd really want to shake it up.
We had Paul Goldsmith and Matua Shane Jones last year caught out boasting to the seafood industry that it was their intention to cut Māori customary rights to just 5% of the shoreline. Lo and behold, you get the... You just wonder whose interests are actually being looked after here. Is it the seafood industry? Because it doesn't look like it's Māori interests that are being looked after.
Yeah, well, a great chunk of that is Māori interests in seafood. When you peel it back, Moana, others. I mean, there are a range of seafood companies, and there's also getting beyond, the short part, 5K out, all of that, further out, and the fishing, not so much customary, but the rest of the fishing quota and all of that. Look, that industry is also in a bit of a pickle at the moment. From what I'm picking up. There's quite a range of companies that are under stress, and we might actually have to see some consolidation in the next little while.
In the seafood industry?
In the seafood industry as well. It really is complex, but it's sort of, when you go back to the heyday of the Māori Fisheries Commission and the settlements around fishing quota, I mean, they were supposed to pave the way for, creating international companies and all the rest.
That's right.
But that's quite different to inshore and and customary. Look, I think it's also more complex because there are different people living in New Zealand now, and the kind of people hoovering up the shellfish aren't Māori, they aren't Pākehā and Polynesian. And you go to some of the beaches around Auckland, pretty damn criminal, frankly, some of the fishing in protected inshore places. People need to respect things, and if you're going to actually have the bounty of the sea at all. So,
follow-up question. Erica Stanford just announced yesterday that the Ministry of Education will drop the obligation to give effect to the Treaty of Waitangi, which has prompted enormous anger and backlash from the Schools Board Association, the Principals Federation, all teachers' union, and the Educational Institute. With the economy in meltdown, is this really a priority, or is it raw meat politics for the reactionary base?
Yeah, really interesting. From what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, there is an element of optionality around that. The compulsion goes, but you can still do it if you choose a school board. I might be wrong on that, but the way I'd been reading it was you're not compelled, but you can do it. Right. Which I actually think would be the right thing. I think actually removing,
compulsion. You're not big on compulsion?
No. I just don't think it's necessarily, where it needs to be. But if people want to do it, fair enough.
Right.
Do it. Yeah.
Simon, National claim they are not anti-Māori or anti-treaty, but every month they seem to be attacking something treaty of Māori. Does the political right need an intervention when it comes to Māori? Do they?
That's quite a good way to look at it. I wonder if I could pick up on a couple of things that Fran has said. If the foreshore and seabed, the current iteration of the legislation is as complex as you say, and I'm sure you're right, it should be off the table. It should not be proceeding in the way it is because the legislation is not addressing the complexity of the issues in any kind of satisfactory way.
I mean, there is a sense. Hold on, there is a sense, is there not, that Māori have had a couple of wins in court and suddenly we need to rewrite the rules? Isn't that? I mean, that's how they see it.
Yes, I know, but I
Right?
don't think that really holds water, and that's something that Goldsmith says.
Yeah.
And Fran, before when you were talking about Chris Finlayson, and maybe you said he's been involved in some of these legal cases since he left. I'm not going to impugn Chris
Well, I
Finlayson's.
didn't either.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I said that.
Okay, thank you. Why on earth we don't leave it with his judgment? He made that judgment as one of the most highly respected national cabinet ministers in the last 20, 30, whatever years.
Bingo.
Let's leave it with that. He got it right. I think most people thought then and still think he got it right.
Right.
Why Goldsmith, not even a lawyer, comes along and thinks he's going to be able to change this,
Yeah.
it is spurious. And then if we go to the question of the new way in which the curriculum is being developed, I'm not at all in favour of the idea that you lose the compulsion about teaching our history because I think that's what it comes down to. I think it's important for New Zealanders, and particularly for schools where they might go, oh, we don't have many Māori kids, so maybe we don't need to do this. It's important for those schools to be doing it along with everybody
Follow-up
else.
question. A Labour plus Greens plus Māori party could be the most transformative government in New Zealand history since the Michael Savage Labour government. Is a Labour, Green, Te Pāti Māori government worth fighting for?
Now, a Labour Green government's worth fighting for. I absolutely believe that. Te Pāti Māori
Can they get to 51%? Can Labour plus Greens get to 51%?
I don't know the answer to that. We are still a year away from an election, thereabouts. And in the volatile political climate we now exist in on an ongoing basis, a year is an awfully long time. So we just don't know.
Yeah.
If National and the coalition government start to fall behind in the polls, National will get a new leader. If the same thing happens on the left and Labour and the Greens start to fall behind in the polls, Labour will get a new leader. And those things will change the equation.
Yeah.
Labour and the Greens have the capacity to get the votes they need, but they're not there yet. They haven't done that before. Te Pāti Māori has the capacity to deliver more votes, but clearly it has an awful lot it has to sort out at the moment. And if you... I was going to say, I've heard this line from John Tamihere, it's the absolute worst government ever and we've got to get rid of it. There's two things to say about that, and one of them is, if that's true, shut the F up and get on with being the party of unity and take your squabbles behind closed doors and keep them there. And the other thing to say is, we've had really bad governments before. Massey's Cossacks, armed civilians acting in the role of police to crush the
Unions.
strikes in 1912. The Muldoon in the 1981 tour, a deliberate, cynical attack on the people of New Zealand that was horrifically divisive and painful for so many people. And most of all, Harry Holland in 1951 with the really savage repression of the waterfront lockout. These are things that we're actually not seeing at the moment. I'm not saying we never will, but we're not seeing that kind of thing right now.
Quick round to both of you. Will we see 2 by-elections and Māori elections before the 2026 election, Fran?
No.
No?
No.
They'll hold on?
I think they will.
They're going to Alamine Kopu it?
Well, I think there'll be a seat warmers, put it that way.
Right.
But, look, there's a risk. There's a huge risk. They might get returned. They might stand it as independents. They might get returned. Or Labour might get over.
And
it.
I think you remember that when Tamihere says they should do what Hane Harawira did. Hane Harawira did not win that by-election.
Exactly.
And he was a much bigger figure with far more mana.
Well, no, he did win. He did win the by-election.
Did he win the by-election?
He won the
by-election.
He won the
by-election.
and I helped him set up Mana, and we did a great job together.
Of course.
Well, you might be needed again.
I know. Give me a call, boys.
Oh,
Give me a call.
God, please, not the Mana Party again.
I love the Mana Party. Comrades, we need to wrap the show with a final word. Fran, your final word this week, please, ma'am.
Well, now I'm completely nonplussed on all of this. Look, as I said, outbreak of anarchy, bloody lovely. Very good for the, the white feeding frenzy, which certain person has described the media. Forgetting the fact that also he worked for that media himself back in the day. here and there. Look, they've got to sort it out. The thing that really interests me is the role of the iwi chairs.
Yeah.
And, getting involved in this.
Yeah.
And trying to sort it out. To me, that signals more of a distaste for the government than anything. The other thing that I keep getting interested in is what's going to happen when the Māori Queen holds her, economic summit. She couldn't give a flying about any of this stuff. She actually wants it to be adult, to move forward,
Yes.
To grow the economy,
Yes.
which, of course, people, like O'Regan from Ngaitahu.
That's right.
Doesn't actually want people getting too much involved in grievances, wants them to concentrate on growing the pie and just get on with it. Because there is sufficient critical mass to do that now.
And it's interesting her talk and her interest in a sovereign wealth fund.
Well, exactly.
That's really interesting, isn't it?
And much more sensible than Labour's piddly one.
Simon, your final word, please.
My final word is Mamdani, and I got it wrong before, but Zoran Mamdani. There is hope in the world. New Yorkers will be going to the polls very shortly. The voting will finish more or less around midday tomorrow. He is so far ahead in the polls that he ought to win, and he demonstrates that there can be progressive policies, they can be appealing, and I'm hoping can work. And all we need to fear is Godzilla Trump rampaging down Fifth Avenue trying to catch him.
Preach. Thank you, comrades. And now to my final word. Brothers and sisters, the jackboot of the state should always be on the throat of the billionaires, organised crime, pig tobacco, the booze barons, gambling, the speculators, the banks, the polluters, and the corporations. But this government have turned the state's jackboot upon us, the people. They're draconian welfare sanctions that are aimed at disqualifying you from welfare rather than helping you find a job. The 8,000 long-term clients cut from ACC without warning. IRD invading people's bank accounts to take debt. The $2,200 fees on those who are official property managers for people unable to file with the public trust. Stopping local communities from complaining about bottle shops opening in their community. Kneecapping pay parity. Literally robbing working women to afford tax loopholes for landlords. We used to mock Jacinda's kindness mantra. But when a government department was caught being unkind, they could expect media coverage with demands of, is this kind, Jacinda? And whatever the issue was, the department would suddenly find an exemption and the person not treated like shit. Under this government, however, it seems like a weekly competition by government departments on who can be the biggest arsehole to Kiwis. This Guy Fawkes Day. Remember, the 5th of November. Gunpowder treason and plot. I see no reason why gunpowder treason should ever be forgot. People shouldn't be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people. In solidarity, the revolution continues. Ka pai Aotearoa.
The Bradbury Group, New Zealand's best weekly political argument. The Bradbury Group is an independent podcast through the Rover Network, sponsored by Wātea News. After the